Shri Advaita At the mic. At the mic.
Read at the mic.
We should say hi to Mike.
Howdy my, howdy my.
Howdy Mike.
Oh, want to grab that for a sec? Is that down coming off? Or has it already been stuck on there? I hold you fully responsible.
It's okay. All sorted.
Is it?
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janababa Kiran Bharatari Gopi Janababa Kiran Bharatari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Janababa Gilbaratari Jai Gopi Janababa Gilbaratari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Janaballabha Giridvaratari Yashodanandana Pradana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Om Vishwam Sabharajak Jai Stot Asatasi Simat AC Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishwam Sabharajak Jai Stot Asatasi Simat Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Gaura Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 29, Explanation of Devotional Service, Text 17. Mahatam Bahumanena Dinanam Anukampaya Maitya Chaivatmatulyeshu Yamena Niyamena Cha Mahatam Bahumanena Dinanam Anukampaya Maitya Chaivatmatulyeshu Yamena Niyamena Cha Mahatam Bahumanena Dinanam Anukampaya Maitya Chaivatmatulyeshu Yamena Niyamena Cha Mahatam, to the great souls. Bahumanena, with great respect. Dinanam, to the poor. Anukampaya, with compassion. Maitreya, with friendship. Cha, also. Eva, certainly. Atmatulyeshu, to persons who are equals. Yamena, with control of the senses. Niyamena, with regulation. Cha, and. Translation: the pure devotee should execute devotional service by giving the greatest respect to the spiritual master and the acharyas. He should be compassionate to the poor and make friendship with persons who are his equals. But all his activities should be executed under regulation and with control of the senses. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 13th chapter, it is clearly stated that one should execute devotional service and advance on the path of spiritual knowledge by accepting the acharya. Acharyo pashanam. One should worship an acharya, a spiritual master who knows things as they are. The spiritual master must be in the disciplic succession from Krishna. The predecessors of the spiritual master are his spiritual master, his grand spiritual master, his great-grand spiritual master, and so on, who form the disciplic succession of acharyas. It is recommended herewith that all the acharyas be given the highest respect. It is stated, Guru Shu Nadamati. Guru Shu means unto the acharyas, and Nadamati means thinking like a common man. To think of the Vaishnavas, the devotees, as belonging to a particular caste or community, to think of the acharyas as ordinary men, to think of the deity in the temple as being made of stone, wood, or metal, is condemned. Niyamena. One should offer the greatest respect to the acharyas according to the standard regulations. A devotee should also be compassionate to the poor. This does not refer to those who are poverty-stricken materially. According to devotional vision, a man is poor if he is not in Krishna consciousness. A man may be very rich materially, but if he is not Krishna conscious, he is considered poor. On the other hand, many acharyas, such as Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, used to live beneath trees every night. Superficially, it appeared that they were poverty-stricken. But from their writings, we can understand that in spiritual life, they were the richest personalities. A devotee shows compassion to those poor souls who are wanting in spiritual knowledge by enlightening them in order to elevate them to Krishna consciousness. That is one of the duties of a devotee. He should also make friendship with persons who are on an equal level with himself or who have the same understanding that he does. For a devotee, there's no point in making friendships with ordinary persons. He should make friendship with other devotees so that by discussing among themselves, they may elevate one another on the path of spiritual understanding. This is called Ishtagoshti. In Bhagavad Gita, there's a reference to Bodhayanta Parasparam, discussing among themselves. Generally, pure devotees utilize their valuable time in chanting and discussing various activities of Lord Krishna or Lord Chaitanya amongst themselves. There are innumerable books, such as the Puranas, Mahabharata, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and Upanishads, which contain countless subjects for discussion among two devotees or more. Friendship should be cemented between persons with mutual interests and understanding. Such persons are said to be swajati, of the same caste. The devotee should avoid a person whose character is not fixed in the standard understanding. Even though he may be a Vaishnava or a devotee of Krishna, if his character is not correctly representative, then he should be avoided. One should steadily control the senses and the mind and strictly follow the rules and regulations. And he should make friendship with persons of the same standard. Translation again. The pure devotee should execute devotional service by giving the greatest respect to the spiritual master and the acharyas. He should be compassionate to the poor and make friendship with persons who are his equals. But all his activities should be executed under regulations and with control of the senses. Om again intermittendasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshunmilithang Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasri Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We are all part of the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That movement means congregational glorification, coming together to glorify Krishna. Our spiritual perfection is achieved in that way. Therefore, association is so important. In bhakti, real wealth and security is number one about our spiritual assets. That doesn't mean we neglect the material energy, because the material energy is Krishna's. Therefore, a devotee is expert spiritually as well as materially, but that material expertise means to recognize everything belongs to Krishna and use everything suitably in Krishna's service. So it's not that to be a Vaishnava means you're clumsy in dealings with the material world. No, actually, you're more careful, you're more attentive, recognizing that you are a steward, utilizing the energy on behalf of Krishna. Seeing Krishna in everything means seeing that everything is Krishna's energy. It doesn't mean artificially you have to walk around imagining Shyam Sundar's form everywhere. That comes spontaneously in the most advanced stages of bhakti. This is demonstrated in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Sri Ramananda Roy and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Ramananda Roy was seeing Radha Krishna everywhere. And Mahaprabhu pointed out, Stavra Jangama Teke, Na Teke Tara Murti. Wherever you look, you're seeing Krishna because of your divine vision. And that's how a Mahabhagavat, topmost devotee, sees. Mahaprabhu explained that such a devotee on such a level certainly sees the various forms of the material energy. It's not that such a topmost devotee walks around and is bumping into walls or falling over because not seeing what you see, but just seeing Shyam Sundar. No, that devotee sees every thing as Krishna's energy, and therefore, spontaneously, Shyam Sundar comes to mind wherever he looks, wherever she looks. This is about love. The example Srila Prabhupada would always give. Mothers can appreciate it very much. If a mother sees a shoe on the floor in the house, she immediately thinks a little shoe, if it's a little shoe. If it's a big shoe, she probably thinks, why is my husband leaving his shoes around? But if it's a little shoe, oh, my darling child. Immediately, she feels affection just by seeing the paraphernalia of the child. Similarly, the example is given that when the fully qualified devotee sees Krishna's energy, he or she immediately connects the energy with the energetic source and immediately sees Shyam Sundar. It's not an artificial process. Just like it's not an artificial process, relatively speaking, when the mother sees the little shoe of the child, immediately, oh, my child, where is my child? So, when a topmost devotee sees the material energy, she immediately thinks, where is Krishna? And this is what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself demonstrated during his years in Jagannath Puri. He would just see a sand dune as he walked on the beach at Jagannath Puri and immediately think, oh, it's Govardhan Hill. So, on the one hand, this is a mistake, but on the other hand, it is the greatest treasure of pure bhakti, love of Krishna in separation. So the point is that the assets of the bhakta, of the devotee, are different than the assets of an ordinary person. Yes, a devotee deals with the material energy, but understands that this is Krishna's. I'm just a steward, using this energy on behalf of Krishna for Krishna's purposes. Therefore, Bhakti Vinod Thakur sings, Manasa Deho Geho Yo Kichumor, Arpinun Tuya Pare Nand Kishore. He's singing, oh Krishna, whatever I have, mind, body, home, it's all yours. Now, it's not that you just say that and meanwhile use everything for your purposes, your selfish purposes. That, you'll find out in purports coming up ahead, that's considered diplomacy. These purports in this chapter give a different definition of diplomacy than what you might think. Sometimes devotees, they accuse another devotee of being a diplomat. You're saying one thing to me, but then to someone else you're saying another, or you're not revealing what's truly on your mind. There are different cultural ways of dealing with persons. And sometimes those cultural ways are different. Just like when I first came to Australia, I was told by the Aussies, the code of ethic here is that what's in the mind comes out on the tongue. Now try that in India. It will never happen. What's in the mind rarely comes out of the tongue. So there are different standards or different concepts of what is diplomacy. But usually we use diplomacy in a negative sense. Oh, you're being diplomatic. You're not being straightforward. We never know where you're at. Or you think of some kind of like representatives of a country in another country, foreign service, diplomats, persons who are supposed to be very smooth and conniving in their dealings, representing their country. But actually in this chapter, diplomacy has a definition which we should think about. It means maneuvering for the sake of your material self-interest. Ooh, that cuts much deeper, doesn't it? Scheming, using your intelligence, manipulating, dealing with others for the sake of your material, personal self-interest. So that is the kind of diplomacy that is condemned in this chapter. So we spoke about a devotee's real assets. Yes, a devotee deals with the material energy carefully because he or she knows the proprietor of that energy. At the same time, the devotee very carefully guards his or her treasure. It is that treasure of bhakti that allows you to see everything in connection with Krishna. So if you lose that treasure, if you jeopardize those assets, everything else becomes meaningless. You can become the most expert materialist in the world, but if you've lost your spiritual assets, what's the use? So we need to keep in mind, what is real wealth? What is real security? As Srila Prabhupada would often say, you can try to be as comfortable as you can in this world, but don't forget what your real mission is. So immediately we start thinking, yeah, try to be as comfortable as I can in this world. Okay, that sounds great. Let's be as comfortable as I can. But you notice that when you absorb yourself in trying to be as comfortable as you can in this world, you can take it too far and forget what is your real purpose in life. So you always have to keep your vision on what is the real asset as you maneuver through material existence. Remembering what is your real purpose shapes all of your dealings, shapes what you want to achieve now and what you want to achieve in the future. Our goal is pure bhakti. We actually want to fall in love with Krishna again. We've forgotten what is the eternal treasure of every living entity. Pure love of Krishna is there in us, but it's dormant. We're sick. We have the disease of material attachment, and we're suffering from that disease. Just like with COVID-19, the question is, who has it? Are you asymptomatic? You have it, but you don't show any symptoms? Are you symptomatic? Are you in the intensive care unit hooked up to a ventilator? So similarly with the material disease, there are different aspects of it, but we want to get rid of it all. That takes care. Just like you deal with material assets. If you're a good materialist, you're very careful. Prahlad Maharaj pointed this out in the 7th canto of Bhagavatam. The materialist is so careful not to waste a single penny. Are there still pennies in New Zealand, or what's the smallest coin? 10 cents. All right, not to waste a single 10-cent coin. I don't know if it happens to you, but I was walking on the street once in Auckland, and I saw a 10-cent coin on the street. And everyone walked by it because I know they were thinking, I'm not bending down for a 10-cent coin. You know, I've got important things to do. I picked it up because it's Krishna's energy. Someone who is actually a real materialist is very careful, as Prahlad Maharaj says, not to waste the tiniest amount of money. Meanwhile, They are wasting their entire human form of life, which is the greatest wealth. So we need to hear this again and again because we're so susceptible to wasting this life. We assume I'll be around for a long time, things will work out. There's a syndrome that's prominent in various places in the developed world. It's called the just world syndrome. Psychologists have a label for everything. So what is the just world syndrome? It's the conscious or unconscious conception that if you're just a nice person and do your job nicely, things will work out for you. And things will work out for your children. And things will work out for your country. Why should calamities strike nice people? And who's a nice person? Well, of course, I'm a nice person. If you ask me, I'm a nice person. Why should calamities happen if you just are nice? You try to do good and leave it at that. Shouldn't the world reciprocate with you in that way? Because you're a nice person, the world should be nice to you. What happens? Calamities strike, wars come, pandemics come, and everyone becomes disorientated. Why is this happening to us? We've noted, since the lockdown in New Zealand has ended, more people than before are coming to our urban outreach centers. We thought that things would be really slow. We thought people would be very afraid, but more than ever they're coming. The book distributors are finding out. People are actually more interested. So it's amazing what a little distress will do. What to speak of big distress. At first, people are stunned because they may have this syndrome, the just world syndrome. We're nice people in this country. We're not bothering anyone else in the world. We don't have any nuclear weapons. We try to take care of everyone. Shouldn't things work out? But this is the kingdom of Durga. The whole material existence is the kingdom of Durga. And her very name, as you know, lets you understand what's going on. The Sanskrit term Durga. Dur means difficult, Ga means progress. You're going to have a hard time. That's what the shelter of Durga means. And what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? We don't want to hear that, though. It's not positive. It's disempowering. Mogasha, moga karmano, moga jnana vichetasaha. All your hopes will be defeated. Mogasha, moga karmano. All your activities will be defeated. Moga jnana. All your attempts for knowledge will go down the drain. You'll be completely bewildered. Not taking shelter of Krishna. So we want to develop real assets and real security. And then we can see Krishna in any circumstance. In this chapter, Lord Kapila Dev is especially going to speak about persons who claim to be devotees but don't know how to treat other living entities. They're called Prakrita Bhaktas. Third-class devotees, or more precisely, Prakrita means, the acharyas say, new or unrefined. They acknowledge the deity in the temple, but they have no idea how to perceive other devotees or how to treat other living entities. So this concerns Lord Kapila Dev so much that he's going to speak with affectionate anger. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that he's going to speak 6 verses of affectionate anger, chastising devotees. You say you're worshiping the Lord. You say you're worshiping the deity in the temple, but what about other living entities? So that's why in this verse we're getting instruction about how to deal with others. Remember in Bhagavad Gita, first Krishna says, Tadvidi paripatena pariprasthena sevaya. If you want to know the truth, then you approach my representative. Tadvidi pranipate. Inquire submissively and render service. The inquiry must be accompanied by service if you want to understand what you've heard. In the next verse, Krishna says, if you do that, here is what will happen. Here is the result of your having properly approached someone in parampara. The result is, yajgata puna moham. You won't be in illusion anymore. And what is the symptom of your not being in illusion anymore? You'll see that all living entities are my parts. Later in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Mamaivam sho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. All living entities are my eternal fragmental parts. So it is an essential part of bhakti to know how to deal with other living entities. Otherwise, our hearts are filled with envy. And that envy manifests in such a cruel way in our treatment to other living entities. I live and you die. So what if you're dying as long as I'm living? And if you have to die for my satisfaction, for something that fulfills me, so be it. Religion, so-called religion, that advocates that kind of thinking is in the mode of ignorance. If in the name of worshiping God, someone can't recognize the presence of the Lord in all living entities, that is tamoguna religion. That means not being able to recognize how to deal with other human beings, and also not being able to deal with other species of life. By slaughtering animals, as you know, you become insensitive to dealings with other human beings, but you can't see it. You become callous, merciless. In the New Testament, it is said that Jesus instructed, commandment number 1, love God with all your might, all your heart. And commandment number 2, love thy neighbor as thyself. So I don't talk about that in a country like New Zealand because there's no religion here. But in the USA, which claims to be a Christian country, I bring the point up. Commandment number 2, I say, love thy neighbor as thyself. But what is the American version of that? Love thy neighbor as thyself, as long as thy neighbor looks like thyself. Everyone looks down at the floor like, oh, yeah, that's the way it is. So it's very important, the instruction that Lord Kapil Dev is giving about how to see all living entities as containing the soul and the supersoul. The soul and the supersoul dwell within. Therefore, for 6 verses, Lord Kapil Dev speaks with affectionate anger, condemning those who can't understand that other living entities have the presence of the supersoul there. In this verse, we're getting instruction about how to deal with others. Superiors, you offer service. Equals, you make friendship. And those inferior, you try to help. So this is a very wonderful guideline for our personal dealings. The pure devotee should execute devotional service by giving the greatest respect to the spiritual master and the acharyas. He should be compassionate to the poor and make friendship with persons who are his equals. So making friendship means that discussing Krishna is the center of that relationship. Sooner or later, the relationship has to always come back to the center. What about Krishna's service? What about Krishna's glories? His name, form, qualities, and pastimes. It doesn't mean you can't say to someone, your equal, how are you doing? Oh, Prabhu, don't ask that. Just talk about Krishna. Doesn't mean you neglect another devotee's health. Well, I don't want to ask about your health because, we're just supposed to talk about Krishna. No, what Lord Kapil Dev's instruction means is that everything is Krishna-centered. You're concerned with someone's well-being because they're Krishna's devotee. And because they're Krishna's devotee, sooner or later you end up talking about Krishna and Krishna's service. Well, sometimes devotees struggle to find the balance in their friendships, in their family life. Things become a bit bifurcated. Well, on the one hand, we have our personal discussions, our personal relationships, our chatting, our resonating, our dialoguing, our debating, arbitrating, argy-bargy, so on. And on the other hand, we have Krishna Katha. And so what happens is that this side assumes monstrous proportions, especially when we forget about the need for glorifying Krishna. It is the emphasis on glorifying and serving Krishna and talking about that actually brings everything else into focus. So we should always remember that our treasure is hearing about Krishna, discussing Krishna, and that means discussing Krishna's service. Talking about how to serve Krishna better is not ordinary talk. You can't just neglect Krishna's affairs, whether at your home or at temple or ashram, and say, well, I'm just focusing on Krishna's glories, Prabhu. Don't bother me with that there's a leaky tap and we're wasting a lot of water. That's just mundane. You're disturbing my focus on Shyam Sundar. No. We're always very concerned with how Krishna is being served. That's actually what the term Ishtagoshti refers to. In the early days of ISKCON, it was quite common for temples to have Ishtagoshtis, gatherings of all the devotees in the community. And what's the purpose of an Ishtagoshti? Probably many of you have never heard the term even anymore, right? How many know the term Ishtagoshti? Okay, but do you know what it means? It's not a gripe session. It's not like a political convention. Ishtagoshti means let's discuss how to serve Krishna better. Oh. How can Krishna's service be improved? So that is the inner core of all personal relationships. You hear in this purport that friendship should be cemented between persons with mutual interests and understanding. That doesn't mean, well, I like scuba diving, this devotee likes scuba diving, let's get together. No. Mutual interests refer to discussing Krishna. And as you become more advanced, you'll start to see what that is all about at a higher level. Different devotees may have different attachments to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in any case, everyone should become attached to relationships based on hearing and chanting about Krishna. Now, what about this negative stuff in the purport? Devotees should avoid a person whose character is not fixed in the standard understanding, even though he may be a Vaishnava or devotee of Krishna. Sounds judgmental, doesn't it? Why would Bhagavatam say that? I mean, different devotees are where they at, they're at different places in their cosmic journey, and who am I to say anything? Who are you to say anything? They're wearing neck beads, they're saying Haribol. Let's leave it at that. Bhakti is a science of lifestyle, and it recognizes that there are potential contaminations that you can pick up. Just like if someone has COVID-19 and you're told not to associate with that person, what would you say? Well, that's being judgmental. I mean, we're all spiritual. We should all just hang out together as close as possible, COVID-19 or not. No, you would be, I appreciate that person, but I don't want the disease. So in that spirit, we have to understand these instructions about avoiding a person who, even though he may be a Vaishnava externally, the character is not up to the standard. Everyone needs friends for talking about Krishna. That means whatever personal discussions you have, which are necessary, the goal is how to improve the Krishna consciousness, how to improve Krishna's service. Not just talking for talking's sake, because that'll go on endlessly, in case you haven't noticed. Everything is Krishna-centered. That's the basis of real friendship. Therefore, Ishtagoshti means a gathering where you discuss how to serve Krishna better. And then this purport instructs that a devotee has as one of his or her duties to show compassion to those who are poor. Poverty means no spiritual understanding. This is one of the duties of a devotee, to help rectify that situation. So if you want your life, your personal life, to be complete, then there should be friendships with equals, persons you can have a Krishna service-centered discussion with, and there should be activities of compassion upon those who are poverty-stricken. They don't have the real assets. Of course, to be of value to anyone else, we have to make sure that we have our assets protected. We have to make sure that our future is secure. We want security in Krishna's service. That's the main thing. Yes, according to our ashram status, we have to make some arrangements for, as best we can in an unstable world, and right now the world is very unstable, in case you haven't noticed. Not simply because of the pandemic, but economically, politically, highly volatile right now, highly unstable. Still, you can try to make plans for your stability and security, according to your ashram status. But that's not the main focus of life. The main focus of life is spiritual security. spiritual stability. That is the main asset. Keeping that clearly in mind allows you to have the buddhi, the intelligence for sorting out the other aspects of life. But if you ditch the spiritual assets, your vision will be very foggy about sorting out your material affairs. You'll become bewildered because you're dealing with the material energy without having taken shelter of Krishna. And there's no way you're going to win doing that. It'll always be a loss. And Krishna guarantees this in Bhagavad Gita. Mogasha, moga karmano, moga jnana vichetasa. Everything will be defeated. For a while it looks like we're succeeding. I've put Krishna aside, I've put devotional service aside, but I'm busy doing a lot of things for success and prosperity. It looks like it's working out. I think I've got it made. I think I'm on the good foot. Even if that's true, it only lasts for a few decades. And then everything is taken away from us. No one wants to hear that, though. Why do we have to talk about death? It happens. But just visualize the situation. What it's like being ripped away from all your attachments. It's a very agonizing process, which materialists don't talk about because they don't understand what's going on in the consciousness of a person leaving the body. The more attachments you have, the more painful it is. It's not that, okay, I spent my life absorbed in material attachment to bodies, to wealth, to property, to dynasty. I spent my whole life doing that, and at the time of death, I just let go. It doesn't work like that. The more attachment there is, the more agony there is. You don't want to give up your body. You might be thinking, if you were in material consciousness, that, yeah, I would just say, okay, that's it, I'm out of here, so what? No, it doesn't work like that. All these attachments built up over decades crowd your mind. And you worry, you're in anxiety. This is described later in the third canto. Oh, what about this? Who will take care of that? Oh, no, I forgot to do this. Oh, what about that? I can't go now. The famous example Prabhupada would always give. Doctor, just give me 1 more year. Let me tidy up my affairs. It doesn't work like that. So therefore, the bhakti lifestyle involves living your life so that you're not hit with a massive mountain of attachments in the last moment of your life. So it is skillful living now so that right now you're getting the best, and also in the future you'll get the best. Now, where is Lord Kapil Dev aiming? As you become an older devotee, you'll start to see different layers in this chapter. At the deepest level, Lord Kapil Dev is aiming at Raganuga Bhakti, spontaneous attachment for Krishna. His instructions are aiming you for greed. You must remember what it's like to be greedy. I know no one here is greedy now, but remember when you were greedy for something. You just couldn't get enough of it, and you didn't want anything getting in your way. I've got to have this. I've got to have more. I can't get enough. That is real bhakti. So the purpose of all these restrictions, injunctions, rules, the purpose of it all is so that your spiritual greed returns. Your lobha comes back. And what does Rupa Goswami say about that? Spiritual greed is rare. If you can find it in some marketplace, buy it immediately. But of course you can't find it in the marketplace, but he's saying like that. Wherever you see it, grab it. It is the rarest acquisition. And this is what Lord Kapila Dev is aiming at in this chapter, Explanation of Devotional Service. He wants you to become greedy again for Krishna. And that greed is presented in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, Machatama Gata Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam. The thoughts of my devotees abide with me. They're always talking about me. They derive great satisfaction and bliss just engaging in conversations about me. That is a greed verse. And this is our aim, to revive our greed for Krishna. So therefore, there are all these proper protocols for interacting with others, how to deal with a superior, how to deal with someone on the equal level, how to deal with those who are downtrodden. All these protocols are not just to harass you and hang you up. They're there to help us revive our greed for Krishna, so that when we hear about Krishna, that's explained in text 19. When one is fully qualified with all these transcendental attributes and his consciousness is thus completely purified, he is immediately attracted simply by hearing my name or hearing of my transcendental quality. Oh, when will that day be ours? Immediately attracted simply by hearing Krishna. Immediately attracted simply by hearing of Krishna's qualities and activities. This is our heart's desire, and this is why we follow the rules and regulations. Not because we love rules and regulations. Sometimes you meet people like that, you know. It's getting less and less common, but sometimes you meet persons who just love rules and regulations for the sake of it. The more rules and regulations, the better. But they have no or scant understanding of what the purpose is. In bhakti, this is a cause for fall down, according to Rupa Goswami, following rules and regulations with no idea of why, or no consciousness of why. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't follow rules and regulations. It means you lost sight of what the purpose is. And of course, the other extreme is not following rules and regulations. So these are both pitfalls. And Lord Kapila Dev is pointing out clearly, the purpose is that you become immediately attracted to Krishna's name and qualities. It's a accompanying understanding that we have developed bad inclinations and bad behavior, bad mentalities. So we have to get over that. By following the process given by Lord Kapila Dev, you get over that and you become attracted spontaneously to Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. That is real wealth. When will that be ours? This is what our heart should be crying out. That is real security. That is real stability. That is the asset. So we need friendships with devotees to bring us along on that path toward the real achievement, the reviving of greed for Krishna. And actually, in his commentary on Bhagavad Gita, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that a devotee in the sadhana stage derives delight and satisfaction knowing the prema stage is up ahead. So you might think, prema, forget it. No, don't forget it. It is up the road, but don't forget it. We're meant to develop in bhakti. That means bhava, then prema. So the acharyas point out that even in the sadhana stage of bhakti, you're enlivened by knowing that up ahead is prema. In the next verse, you hear that a devotee should always try to hear about spiritual matters and should always utilize his time in chanting the holy name of the Lord. His behavior should always be straightforward and simple, and although he is not envious but friendly to everyone, he should avoid the company of persons who are not spiritually advanced. You don't engage in loving transactions with non-devotees. Now that may sound a bit restrictive. And it requires some skill. It doesn't mean you're obnoxious to others, because Lord Kapila and Lord Chaitanya said, well, I should not in any way engage in any interactions with you. That is Vaishnavachar. Vaishnava behavior. A satsangachar, a Vaishnavachar. First symptom of a Vaishnava is that he or she rejects the company, the association of the asat, those who are dedicated to the temporary. That doesn't mean you're insensitive and brutal or cold. It means that you don't invest your heart into such relationships. You recognize the presence of the Lord in everyone, but you're under no obligation to invest your heart into such dealings. Just like you recognize the Lord is in the heart of a tiger, but does that mean you embrace the tiger? So you see, I hope, that bhakti requires some skill, some knowledge, and proper application. Everything remains in focus when we have our proper diet of hearing and chanting about Krishna, and we're eager to engage in Krishna's service. Then you capture Krishna's attention, and you can make further progress. And your goal is to develop spontaneous greed for Krishna. All right, any questions? Yes?
What if you have relationships, friendships that you've already invested your heart, and maybe they're going through something, maybe I will go through something up and down in bhakti. So how do you deal with those relationships in the present if they're going through something?
How do you deal with other devotees when they're going through a bad spell? Is that it? It's tricky. You don't want to be contaminated. At the same time, if possible, you want to help them. A lot of it has to do with timing. There's a right time to say something and a right time not to say something. You'll find that out as a parent. I find it out all the time as a spiritual parent. When do I say something and when do I just button my lips, you know? It's a real yajna, it's a real austerity. The tendency is to say something immediately. Devarmrita, why are you doing this? But then sometimes you just have to wait because the person's not ready to hear it. So you just have to bite your tongue with the hope that in the future the person will listen. It's not that whether you're a biological parent or a spiritual parent, it's not that you can just say what's ever on your mind whenever it comes. Most of the time, I've observed, most of the time, spiritual masters can't say what's on their mind because the disciple is not ready to hear it. You have to wait. Sometimes you have to wait until some difficult situation strikes the person, and then they're, oh, Gurudev, why is this happening? You know the old Bengali proverb about there was a fool who was sitting on the limb of a tree and sawing the limb of the tree that he sat on. And then someone came by and said, "Hey, what are you doing? You're sawing the very limb that you're sitting on. You're going to get hurt. You're going to crash to the ground." And the fool said, "Who are you to tell me anything?" So the fool kept sawing, and of course the limb broke, and the fool fell to the ground, and the person who tried to warn him was still there. And so the fool looks at that person and says, "You must be psychic. How did you know this was going to happen?" So often it's like that. You just can't say. They just, "Jai Gurudev, Jai Guru Maharaj, Hare Krishna," and leave it at that, because they're not ready to hear. So it's a mistake in any kind of parenting to think that the dependent is always ready to hear. I remember discussing a point related to this with my godbrothers. And we all expressed a common discovery. We thought that with our experience of decades in Prabhupada's mission, of seeing so many things happen or not happen, we thought that we would be able to save our disciples from repeating the same mistakes, because the new generation would be so eager to hear of our experiences and they would take our counsel so seriously, and things would just get better and better because we have such a storehouse of experience that we can impart. No, I remember 30 years ago we tried to do that, and this is what happened. "Oh, yes, Gurudev." We thought it was going to be like that, you know. So we took all these disciples thinking they're all going to listen. And I guess it's like someone who has children and thinks, "Oh, I'll have 1 or 2, 3 or 4 or 5 children. They'll all listen to me." And so similarly, perhaps we thought like that. It's just going to be automatic that the new generation wants to benefit from the accumulated wisdom of the previous generation. No. That takes someone in the mode of goodness to be able to hear like that. Mode of passion means you may have gone through what you did, but our situation is different. And will be different what we do. Others may have had those problems, but that's for others. We'll be different. What is it? There's a famous statement by some Italian politician. "History is the best teacher, but there are no pupils." So often you'll find out as a parent or as a spiritual teacher, you can't say everything that's on your mind. You have to wait, hope, and pray. So similarly, with associates who are getting into varying degrees of Maya, you can see it, but you have to be caring and strategic in your approach. And they may not be able to listen. You may have to just bide your time, wait a few moments, even a couple of years, and then after they saw the limb and fall to the ground, "Oh, I remember, Devarmrita, you warned me. You must be a fortune teller or an astrologer. How did you know?" It's the way it is. Often they don't even get back to you with any kind of gratitude. So I often point out that the more gratitude is expressed toward anyone who tries to help us, the more we increase the guidance culture. Everyone thrives on gratitude. Now, even if the person you're showing gratitude toward is actually beyond all that, still it's spiritually good for you. Just like when there's a Vyasa Puja ceremony for someone doing the service of initiating guru. It's not that, well, I really need to hear all this, so yeah, more offerings. I mean, really kind of gives me good self-esteem. It kind of gives me a purpose in life. More. Another offering. Step right up to the microphone. It's not like that at all. So the spiritual master is thinking, this is all praise due to my predecessors. And ultimately it all goes to Krishna. But for the persons making those offerings, they make spiritual advancement. So gratitude in any case is always wonderful to express. It benefits everyone. Even if you show gratitude to someone who is not needing gratitude in order to do their service, still you benefit. If you make a policy to show appreciation toward anyone who's tried in any way to help you, you'll see such a difference that makes. Never let that person forget. Just like there's one example comes to my mind. A devotee from France who came to Bhakti in New Zealand. He met Dayamaya on the street, and then he came to the Bhakti Lounge in Wellington. He happens to be a very educated devotee with a law degree from the topmost institution in France. And he's now a brahmachari in the UK. He's distributing books and leading the brahmachari ashram. But whenever he always asks about Dayamaya in a grateful way. If she hadn't met me on the street, where would I be now? So that kind of expression of gratitude expands the Sankirtan mission. But if you take it for granted, you helped me 10 years ago, so what? You tried to give me advice. Yeah, it was good at the time, but anyway. You didn't tell me about making money, and now I need more money, so forget all the spiritual advice you gave me. Just think of the persons you should be grateful toward. The more gratitude you express, the better it is for you and everyone else. And certainly there are things that you could be grateful for that other devotees have given you. But you have to start thinking about that. I remember one devotee, the only time I've ever seen it in a Vyasa Puja offering, she wrote, "Thank you for that I have such a nice husband." How often do I hear that? It's amazing what gratitude does. It changes the whole atmosphere. Now, everyone has something to be grateful for. Whether you're in rapture in your home life or not, everyone has something to be grateful for. If you stop looking for that, you'll become a grouch, you'll become cynical and in low consciousness. And how will you enliven everyone, or anyone thinking like that? If you're always focusing on faults, we don't have this, we don't have that. Where's the money? Where's the big house? Where's this? Where's that? What's your value anyway? What have you ever done for me? It just goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. So it's a great Vaishnava practice. It's not positive psychology. It is the symptom of a devotee to express gratitude. That's part of friendliness. It's also part of respecting and worshiping a superior. You can even do this. One final point. You can, on your phone, you can have an app. And every time you show gratitude to someone, you can, note it down on your phone. You'll see what a difference it makes. So what Lord Kapila Dev is instructing in this chapter is all about the goal of becoming greedy for Krishna. Any other questions? Yes?
You mentioned one of the keys for being able to hear is to access and be more goodness. So I asked that question about what is the best way of gaining that status of life in goodness?
It's a loop. Everything feeds into everything else. Have a mode of goodness lifestyle, and it's easier to hear about Krishna. It's easier to take advice. And the more you hear about Krishna and take advice, the more you're able to live a mode of goodness lifestyle. So one thing feeds into the other. When we're passionate, we can't listen. But what do you know anyway? Look, you may be right, but I got to do it my way. How many times a person has said that? I know what you're saying. That was Dhruva's response to Narada Muni. I hear what you're saying, that I shouldn't be so hung up about fame and stature and self-esteem and recognition, but I can't swallow that kind of advice. I'm a Kshatriya. I'm in the mode of passion. You're giving me Brahmana advice. I can't hear it. So much of bhakti is about lifestyle, about focusing on the real assets in life. That doesn't mean we go to an extreme and neglect the necessities of our material situation, but we'll only have a clear vision of our material needs and situation when we're taking care of the spiritual needs. It's very mystical, isn't it? Anything else? Yes.
How relevant or what does it mean when Prabhupada says friendship should be of people of the same caste?
I explained that. He's reading from the purport. Friendship should be cemented between persons with mutual interests and understanding. Such persons are said to be swajati, of the same caste. He's giving you the real caste understanding. Not caste by birth, but caste formed by persons who have the same spiritual interests. If you're interested in hearing and chanting about Krishna, you'll make friendships with those who want to do the same. If you're interested in distributing Krishna's glories, you'll make friendships with those who want to do the same. If you're interested in having service-centered family life, you'll associate with those who also have that focus. Anything else? Yes.
I'm thinking about how we see in Srimad Bhagavatam in relationship to how respect is given between the seniors and the juniors. You see, like even the Pandavas, they're just a year apart in terms of birth, but that's like determining who's senior, who's junior. One touches the feet, the other smells the head, kind of thing. So now, how does it look? How do we express those dynamics and relationships between devotees? Because we don't have that kind of culture that they had then. It came so naturally. So what does it look like to show respect between juniors and seniors? And
So he's asking, in case you didn't hear, how do you, in today's culture or lack thereof, do you show respect to those who are in some way senior to you? I suppose you mean in devotional stature, or how many years practicing bhakti, or
Yeah, 'cause
just he gave the example of the Pandavas that, although they're 5 brothers, they discriminated, they distinguished between who's older and who's younger. Yes, we live in a culture of zero respect, and that can influence our bhakti dealings. We live in a material culture of no gratitude and no respect. So therefore, in our dealings with devotees, sometimes it can be a bit of a rough house, even in our family affairs, because we're not accustomed to treating other living entities with respect and showing gratitude. And we're also afraid that if I acknowledge you as in any way senior, you'll take advantage of me. Because in the Western world, many persons have been abused by those in positions of authority, by their own parents, by their own elder brothers and sisters. They've been abused. And so you have that fear. If I acknowledge in any way that you have one leg up on me, I could be in trouble. And it's true that if you just base everything on extremes of, well, I started chanting Hare Krishna 1 year before you did, therefore. Because actually a real Vaishnava is not hungry for respect. If someone has responsibility for ordering Krishna's service, for organizing Krishna's service, you respect that. It doesn't mean you think the person is materially infallible. But respect is given in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission to those who are taking a position of responsibility for Krishna's pleasure. As you become more purified, you'll notice the subtle ways of acknowledging seniority. Just like even amongst sannyasis, the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition is that seniority is not shown by when you take initiation, it's by when you take sannyas. But obviously, we can't really apply that in ISKCON because it's a preaching organization and it's a bit different in taking in various cultures from all over the world. But strict traditional Gaudiya Vaishnava protocol is, well, when did you take sannyas? That's when you throw your weight around as being senior. So you haven't gotten there yet, so. You gotta be humble. You can't lord it over as a sannyasi yet. Can't get all the maha. But as I pointed out last week, when you're at that stage where everyone wants to bring you all the maha, you can't eat it. It's too much sugar. You're on a restricted diet. Where's my enjoyment? You can acknowledge, okay, this one came to bhakti 5 years before me. But as the years go by, the 5-year difference becomes less and less important. In fact, as you become an older devotee, you actually start respecting everyone without drilling down into those details. So it's not a rigid thing. Certainly, if you're a younger devotee, You respect Prabhupada's disciples. But I think the best answer is that we work on respecting everyone, while especially acknowledging devotees who are clearly senior in stature. But that doesn't mean you expect them to be materially infallible, and you may have disagreements with them about how to best serve Krishna. Not that because I came to bhakti 5 years before you did, you accept my plan for the management. You may have a different vision, and then you can respectfully say that. I respectfully disagree. Okay? Got it? Anything on this side? Yes.
Guru, I was just wondering, you mentioned about not investing in the heart with those who are non-devotees. So I was thinking that in our cultivation efforts, with people who are very newly coming along, if we don't invest our heart, then...
That's different. How can you preach without heart? How can you cultivate and care without a heart? But that's Krishna's business. You put your heart into Krishna's business. You're not just associating with non-devotees just for the sake of it, you know. Now let's talk. Let's go to a cafe somewhere and just chat. You're not doing that, I hope. No, you're nurturing others for Krishna's pleasure. You're being friendly with them for Krishna's purposes. That's different. And of course, your heart is invested because you care. They are potential devotees. And there'll be agony and ecstasy. You'll be surprised by some you never expected. They make so much spiritual advancement. I never thought that person would be like that. You'll be disappointed. You have great expectations for someone. They start out in bhakti, real slam bang, and then they fizzle out and even blame you. Why did I meet Munjaranya? If I hadn't met her and listened to her and practiced bhakti for 3 years, in that amount of time I could have made $500,000. Rarely, but sometimes I get letters like that. Very rare. It's Kali Yuga, you know, in case you haven't noticed. This is why Krishna says, no one is more dear, nor will there ever be one more dear than the one who spreads my glories to others. It's not always easy. Your heart is invested, therefore sometimes there are heartbreaks. There's agony and there's ecstasy. It's the most exciting adventure, carrying out the mission of Lord Chaitanya. And you get the biggest salary. You become the most highly paid person. The salary and love of Krishna. Where's Dinanath? He had his hand up. You raised your hand, Dinanath? You have a question? Huh? Okay. Anyone else over here? Yes.
Similarly, when you invest your heart in devotees, which is what we're supposed to be doing, we know that devotee relationships are the most sweetest thing, and that we want to cultivate that more and more. And if there's some misunderstanding or a difference in how we serve Krishna, and we respectfully deal with that, we offer our service to devotees when there's a misunderstanding.
Heal whose heart? Yours?
Our own failings, our own.
You try to make amends, it may take some time. Be in it for the medium and long range. Not that, well, I tried to express to that person, look, we had a misunderstanding, and the other person didn't understand my presentation, so that's it. I've done my part. You can't do that in a marriage, right? Or maybe you can. Maybe you can. No. It's an ongoing process. You can't just file devotees in a file cabinet. Okay, close the drawer. You have to be dedicated to pushing on, trying to resolve things. And it's not always easy, I agree. It's not always easy. You may have to wait 10 years or more. But you don't give up. You're always watching for an opportunity, for a glimmer of light in the cloudy sky. And when you see an opportunity, you go for it. Something you can do for that person that breaks the ice. Something you can do for that person that clears up the fog of the past. You just have to be on your toes and watching. It may take a long time. But you're ready. Last question.
You mentioned with your disciples and spiritual children.
Why mine?
That time is, you have to choose my time when to say something and not to. Does that also apply to some of the very long-standing disciples, like Kamatitha or Juliacha or Vasinacha, because of their...
Why are you asking about particular persons? Why don't you ask about yourself? Funny question. You bring others up by name. What about you?
I was just wondering if you're able to directly tell those people where you saw them.
When did you first find out about bhakti? What year?
Some
1999. How many years ago was that? 21. I say no more. All right, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Hare